For those of you that are still in a position where you're trying to determine a name for your company, obviously this can be very difficult. There are certain activities that you can go through that help you come up with a name. Obviously, just a wild brainstorm is fantastic. But again, this is where brand strategy is really important. As soon as you start to have a better understanding of your pyramid, of your positioning statement, of your competitive set, you have a much easier time of creating parameters for your naming. So that's the first thing we do. It's about creating a framework that you can operate within, because otherwise staring at a blank page trying to name this company can feel impossible, especially if you're not a creatively minded person or it doesn't come naturally to you. So one of the things that we like to do is we take the information that you've uncovered through brand strategy. For example, what are the attributes, the persona of this particular brand? And those would go at the top. Try and keep this limited to 5. And make them as specific as you can. Below that, think about the types of areas that make sense. A really smart place to start, especially if you're thinking about trademarking, is a fictional word. A fictional word is one, obviously, that isn't currently in existence or doesn't have any dictionary meaning associated with it. The way that we come up with fictional words, a lot of times you can look at other languages. Latin is a great place to start. It's the root of many different languages. And marrying that with another word. So creating a compound word. If you think of brands like Google, which doesn't really represent anything, it suddenly, now that it's a brand, represents everything, but it's a fictional name. A lot of people are afraid of fictional names for that reason, that they don't seem like they stand for something or they don't explain the product, but that's okay. There's a number of different companies now. There's an insurance company called Zebra. There's an insurance company called Lemonade. It doesn't necessarily have to tie back to the product, which might seem counterintuitive. The other thing to think about, if you are averse to trademark infringement, is thinking of a phrase. Now, this is a very difficult challenge for someone, but it's not to say it can't be done. It is easier to trademark those types of things. It's also easier in both of these categories to find URLs that are closest to your actual business name. Other places that you can think about are alliteration and onomatopoeia, something that just sounds good and feels good to say. There are certain words like that. There are brands like that. Bombas is fun to say. It's representative. It's actually taken from the Latin of bee and the idea of building a hive, and the community is an important part to them. This is something that gets uncovered through brand strategy, and so we know to hone in on that particular part. But you can also see how it's not necessarily literal. I would be mindful to stay away from what everybody wants. I want a short name, and it means something in English. No, from a trademark perspective, that can be really difficult. I highly recommend, as you're looking for names, if you don't have a lawyer or an attorney, you can go and search for trademarks under USPTO, and it'll give you a sense of that name is already taken in your category, which is a good thing to know as you're launching this name, that it's not going to be one that's already close to something in the competitive set or exists in another state that you're just not familiar with. The other thing that's a blessing and a curse is that regardless of category, there are some names that people are just going to be especially litigious around. McDonald's is a good example. Anything that's going to say Mick or use arches is probably going to be problematic. The same is true with any major brand. The bigger the brand, the bigger the lawsuit. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about how big you ultimately think you could scale. If you are a brand and thinking you're ultimately going to want to be global, it's probably wise to make a very conservative decision on the name so that you don't have to combat that later. If you think you're going to stay local and regional, much less of a consideration. So think about it from that perspective of what are the different qualities from the top, and then what are the areas that I want to play around in, whether that's a phrase, whether that's fictional. It can also be a place, a geographic location. It could be a proper name. Again, be careful with trademark. It could be your name, which is also a possibility, or it could be a nickname that you have. Just make sure that whatever your name is that it ties back into the brand in a meaningful way. And you can create that meaning. It doesn't have to be intrinsic in the word, but it's something that you should feel good about and hopefully will last you for the life cycle of your entire business. Choosing the right name is really important, mainly because it is going to be the name of your business. Changing it is possible. We do a lot of exercises where clients come in because of trademark issues, or alternatively, the company was named after a founder that's no longer there, and there's no real meaning associated with the name, and so they're hungry to create meaning for the name. It is not to say that it can't be done, but there is expense associated with that. There is potentially losing brand awareness, because when you switch the name, maybe your existing client base or people that have used you before don't know who you are now. It can also create a sense of mistrust in the marketplace. Why are they renaming? Did they get bought out? Is there something that's happened? So I would definitely say spend the time to get the right name. It's important. It's going to last. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, that.